I'm here with my very good friend Ben Edmonds. Ben, say hey.
Hey.
And we are joined by very special guests all the way across the ocean. Famed PHP internals developer Joe Watkins. Joe, how's it going?
It's going well. It's very early in the morning.
Yeah, super thank you for doing this. I know you said it's like 1:30 in the morning over there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you don't have to be to work at 6 a.m. or anything, do you? Like, you're good for a while?
I pretty much roll out of bed whenever I want. Start work whenever I want.
That's a dream right there. How do I get that job?
You have to be me.
So everyone can put that in perspective that's listening at home. Joe has just been sitting there smoking like a champion since we first started the video.
Yep. It's pretty impressive for all things.
It's peak European.
Yeah, it's peak European. We replaced Phil with Joe, and instead of being super drunk, we're going to be super high. So I think that's a fair thing. But so we brought Joe on because in a couple months we get PHP 7.4 coming out, and then next year, if all goes well and internals doesn't blow themselves up, we get PHP 8. And so if you've been keeping track of internals and watching the mailing list and things like that, Joe's been very active in both the development of 7.4 as well as past versions, and has been actively working to make the mailing list a lot better, the RFC process a lot better, and is working towards PHP 8. So to give us, to kind of start with what's coming up first, looking at everything that's gone through in the RFC process and has been accepted in the 7.4, what feature, Joe, just really excites you about what we're going to get this coming winter?
I think probably top of the list has got to be FFI and type properties. They're probably the best things coming to 7.4 at the moment. Can you hear me properly? Is my mic in a good place?
Type properties, I think a lot of us know and understand what type properties are, but can you kind of break, what exactly is a foreign function interface, which is what FFI stands for, and as for a run-of-the-mill common PHP developer like myself, how does that benefit me?
Okay, well, it doesn't.
Perfect.
It's really only useful to you if you can already write in C. So you have to have the knowledge and skill of a C programmer to actually, and an internals developer really, to actually use it. Not really an internals developer, but you've got to be a good C programmer. So it's not really going to be useful for you. However, already people are starting to build stuff with it that you can get involved with because it's written in PHP. And like Anthony Ferrara is working on a PHP compiler that uses some FI and libgcc JIT and some LLVM stuff and it uses the FFI, but that's all written in PHP, so you could get involved in that kind of project. It's just it's for internals developers really. So that's not really going to benefit you, not directly anyway.
It still sounds really cool.
So for those of us that don't know FFI, right? What's the idea behind it? Is it like a bridge? Just like a...
Yeah, basically, it allows you to write code in PHP that calls C library functions. So you could write, a UI extension in PHP. You could write the API in PHP interfacing with a C library. So that's the idea of it. It's literally a foreign function interface. It allows you to call foreign functions from C libraries. So yeah, that's what FFI is.
Cool. And why are you looking forward to that? Just as a C programmer, make your life better? Or do you have any ideas in mind to use it from a user line?
I've got a couple of extensions that I actually think I might rewrite in PHP because I don't get any help with them. And that's because there's 10 programmers that can help me. So if it's written in PHP, even if they're not familiar with the subject matter. Everyone can read it and everyone can understand it. So they get an understanding from just reading it. There's a couple of extensions I'd like to write, but it doesn't really. It's probably at the moment it's harder and less efficient to write stuff with FFI than it would be just to write it in C. And because I can already write in C, there's no reason for me to use the FFI really, other than it's a cool toy.
Would like distribution be a reason though, right? Because isn't it harder to distribute things that are written in C in general to the community?
Well, yeah, but I mean, do you want to distribute a pile of crap? I mean, it in comparison to the C code, it's no good. I mean, it allows you to do, in the case of the PHP compiler project, that would be impossible without FFI. So that makes sense. But for normal things, when it's a choice between writing an extension and writing the code with FFI, there's no good reason to choose FFI at the moment because it's so much slower and less efficient. So you just wouldn't do that for a normal project, really. There's only the distribution argument. But yeah, that's pretty weak when what you distribute is so bad.
Yeah,
so looking at the vote, it seemed like it was pretty close. What was like, what were some of the things that people who voted no were kind of saying against FFI?
Well, I voted no because it had no user base. Like one person had used it, that was Dimitri. No one knows how to use it. The API looked really weird, but I'm told it looks like APIs in other languages, so whatever. And we don't really know what the security implications are of allowing that kind of access. I mean, we can guess. We know what may be possible, but it's not a real world project yet, and there was no good reason for it to be in PHP source. It could have done just as well as a PECL extension. It probably could have done better as a PECL extension, and then got a user base, improved itself, and then later on been merged into PHP. But it's been probably merged too early, really. But it's there now, so.
So we might as well be excited for it since we
might as well start using it. Yeah.
I mean, it looks interesting. I kind of, I mean, I'm glad you broke it down because as someone who doesn't do internals, I just watched the mailing list. Like, a lot of people seemed very excited for this, and I couldn't exactly figure out why. But now that like we can start writing extensions and things like that just in PHP using the FFI, it kind of makes a lot more sense to me.
What you can do is write APIs that you would write as extensions. But precisely, you can't actually write extensions because as code, you can't access parts of, like if a normal thing for an extension to do would be do something at startup. But you can't do something at startup with your code. You have to do that in the normal way, in the normal PHP way. You can write APIs that you would write as extensions, but when it comes to actually like things like Xdebug and things that actually interface closely with the engine, you can't write that in FFI. That's not reasonable. But you can write the sort of things that today you would write as extensions in with FFI and PHP. That's more precise. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that gives the audience a good overview of like what it can do, and I mean, I hope in the coming years that it only gets better and helps more and more people kind of expand their use of PHP and things like that. But to go back, you mentioned the other thing was type properties. For those who don't know, this kind of lets you set getters and setters on a property, or you can. What is it? You don't need getters and setters so much anymore because you can just type out your scalar type ints on your properties. That one, that took a little bit of a while to get into the core. I know Phil started it, I think, back a couple years ago, and it kind of dropped. Was there any reason why it was picked up back now? And
it was me and Phil, and what happened was the implementation that we had then was bad, and there was some stuff missing, but it was also missing from the engine side. There was like there was no opcodes for setting and getting static properties. So we decided to just leave out static properties, and we also left out references, and they were the sticking points. Everyone said we couldn't have it if it didn't support static properties and it didn't support references. So then Nikita and Bob just decided that they would get the opcode handlers into core and then work on the patch. And that's what they did, and they've done such a good job. You couldn't argue with the RFC. It was you just couldn't argue with it. So it got in unanimously. That did take several years and several iterations and a lot of effort from a lot of people. But yeah, that's the first real type in PHP, because when you have getters and setters that have types, you don't really have strong types. You just have type in a boundary from the entry to a function and the exit. But during the function, nothing is stopping the type of the variable changing. So that's the first real types in PHP. So that's pretty good, really. Yeah, it took years.
Yeah, I'm excited by it. I love the idea of it. What are your thoughts on the preloading RFC? Because that seems like it.
On the what one?
Preload.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's really great. That's gonna, for a lot of people, that is probably gonna, in the real world, that is probably gonna give them a better performance boost than the JIT is.
So, like, my understanding of it is that, especially for like frameworks or things that don't change very often, right? It could be a pretty big performance boost. Is that a correct understanding, or is there a better use case for it?
Yeah, it is a correct understanding. It means that it's not just that the preloading feature where it actually makes the code available, that's useful for you. But underneath, how it's able to do that is that means it can share code across processes and threads without modifying the code. So before, when you loaded stuff from opcache, it would have to copy it quite deeply. It wouldn't just be updating pointers in a function table. It would be updating pointers in a function table and then copying memory to that pointer and then working with static variables and things like that. And now it doesn't need to do that. As soon as an interpreter is ready in a process or a thread, opcache can just insert the function into the table and that's it, just the pointer. So that means when the startup for a process when opcache is loaded with preloaded is very fast, much faster than it has been in like previous versions of PHP. So yeah, and even when you don't actually use the preloading feature, even when you just got opcache loaded in versions that support preloading, that's how it loads code now. So you get the benefit, even if you're not using the preloading feature, you get the benefit of the improvements anyway. So yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, it seems like everyone's all excited about the JIT, but really, I mean, this seems kind of like one of the bigger wins for PHP that's kind of slid under the radar, if I'm understanding everything correctly. Because I mean, this sounds like such a huge performance space that like really no one's even talking about.
It's only really going. For most people, it's not going to improve your WordPress. I mean, it is. You're going to be able to measure the difference, but it's not going to improve it so much that it's like a really good reason to upgrade. If what you're going to do is run WordPress with it, you know. What it means is that we can start to do other things with PHP. That's realistically where it's got actual advantages. It's not going to help us really on the web. It's going to make everything a little bit faster, and we're going to save money and be a bit greener, and that's great. But the real interesting thing is that now we can use PHP for stuff that we just wouldn't use it for before, because it was just too slow. You know, like there's lots of interest in like machine learning, like data analysis and that sort of stuff, and they're really CPU heavy tasks, and PHP is going to be good at that. So that's pretty exciting. But the stuff we do on the web isn't CPU heavy, so it's no big deal for us on the web. But for the future and where we go with PHP, that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, with the JIT, I mean, would just a normal developer without much knowledge of like underlying processes notice a massive speed increase between preloading and the JIT together, or?
Well, I mean, they will notice. With them together, they will notice a speed increase, but it's likely that at first they will also notice crashes because the JIT is not as stable as Opcache. So most people are going to benefit more from preloading. That's the thing you're going to want to roll out as soon as you can get support in production. You're going to want to roll that out as soon as possible. But JIT, you want to be a bit more cautious about. You may want to just not deploy it on some projects that just can't benefit from it. You want to measure and you want to be careful and you want to weigh up whether it's worth it more carefully and whether it's not just switching a cache on. It's more complicated than that. It could destabilize things and that needs consideration. So
is that really why the JIT went to an 8 release and the preload was just an a dot release, or what was the decision there?
I mean, preloading was a feature that, like I said, it was developed as a feature of Opcache, the ability to do that, and that was a long time coming and slowly developed, and understood and simple. Whereas the JIT is not understood by anyone really, except a few people, and we need time. If it was in 7.4, we'd be in the position where there's only a few people who can actually fix bugs and like propose complex features and things. So
sorry to cut you off. I've heard some concern from internal developers that there aren't really many people that understand the JIT. Is that something you're all working on, or how big of a change is this really in complexity?
Well, the reality is that we are C programmers, and the JIT is written in a weird kind of assembly that no one's ever seen. So even if you're good at assembly, you might be lost in the internals of the JIT. So it is something we're working on, but obviously we're all just in our spare time. You know, there's hardly anyone is employed to work on PHP. Only Nikita, as far as I know, and some people at Microsoft. But most of us just in our spare time and weekends, we've got to read, you know, complex papers and complex documentation. If we can find it, in actual fact, we've got to read the code and just try to understand it and deconstruct it in our heads. It's complex and we need time. It's going to take at least a year. You know, when it comes out, there'll be enough of us confident that we can fix bugs and function like we do now. But if it was to come in PHP 7.4, it'd just been too early. We'd have just crawled to a halt, basically.
Okay. So I know a little C and I know zero assembly. Why is the JIT written in a weird version of the assembly or a weird syntax?
Okay, well, you know, it's the one from Lua. So what happens is...
so is it a straight port from Lua? Is that what it is?
Copied code. That's how it's shared, you know. It's open source. And it's literally copy and pasted code from Lua. And what you do is you write definitions in this mixture of C and assembly and macros that the preprocessor understands. And then Lua runs the preprocessor. The preprocessor is written in Lua. And it runs during the compiler PHP and generates compilable code from that. So it's quite complicated and it's so foreign because it's just for DIN-ASM is the name of the library. It's just for that. So unless you've worked with that before, you've got no idea what any of it means, even if you're good at assembly. And a lot of us aren't good at assembly because you don't need to be good at assembly because we're C programmers. just like a lot of PHP developers aren't good at C because they're PHP programmers. You know, it doesn't go hand in hand necessarily. Although we've got some knowledge of it by necessity, we don't feel comfortable. So yeah, it's going to take a year at least.
So HHVM had a JIT too, right? How does this compare to that JIT?
Well, HHVM's is more advanced. They wrote a lot of their own. The thing that we borrowed from Lua, they wrote a lot of that from the ground up, so they had really fine control over how it worked and the abilities of it and the optimizations they can do. And that's a much more advanced thing. I mean, it even says in the RFC, in comparison to the other JITs in the world of dynamic languages, it's probably the simplest.
Is there a reason it wasn't ported from HHVM instead?
Oh, it just doesn't. They're not the sort of code bases that can share like that.
Okay.
We can share ideas, but that would just be more trouble than it's worth, really. Okay. Yeah.
Matt, so I think you're speaking and you're muted, Matt.
Yeah, I am.
I see just your lips moving and you moving around.
I'm still learning how to do this. So yeah, I think the last kind of feature of 7.4 everyone's excited about is the short arrow syntax that Nikita just got in maybe a couple weeks ago, and that seems pretty promising. Is that like something that excites you as well, or is it just kind of one of those like?
That's another thing that's been coming for a while. I think that's the second or third attempt, and yeah, we just sort of knew it was going to eventually happen. It was just a case of choosing the syntax for it. So I'm glad that that's over.
Can you speak to why you went with the FN keyword instead of just parentheses? I'm sure there's a very good reason.
You know what? I don't think I even voted on it because I have no preference. It doesn't matter. Other than the technical reasons why we can't do things because of parser limitations, there's no good reason really to choose one over the other. They all look quite foreign if the only thing you do is PHP, and the vast majority of people that use PHP do in fact only use PHP. So that's what we've really got to care about. And they're all foreign, so they'd all require learning. They're all exactly the same to the vast majority.
So was there a parser limitation though on just doing the parentheses? Like you had to have a keyword there to parse it?
Yeah, it's parser limitation. They're not the sort of limitations that you cannot lift, but they're the sort of limitations that would cost a lot to lift a lot of the time. So they would just complicate things too much. So we call them limitations, but obviously nothing's actually, very few things are actually impossible. It's just we try to keep the parser simple because of the future and what we might want for the future. So we try to keep it as unambiguous as possible. Like we try to keep shift reduce to a bare minimum, so that it's all future proof basically.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I know some people were bummed out about the function keyword, but I think they're a small subset of PHP developers, and they're usually the loudest ones bitching and moaning
I
about.
I wish it wasn't there, mostly because I'm used to it not being there from other languages, specifically like JavaScript, right? But like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It actually it's kind of nice because at least from a client, she could tell what language you're in.
Yeah.
There's this problem like when you're using two similar syntax of languages, it's very hard to context switch because they're so close but slightly different. I kind of prefer them to be rather different, right? So you don't have that same cognitive overhead.
Yeah, I mean, it all. I personally don't mind it. I mean, it's two keystrokes on the keyboard, and PHP Storm probably already has support ready to roll out as soon as 7.4 hits hits production and it's released. So it probably won't even be that much effort at all. I guess the the pressing issue now is when are we going to get generics is kind of the thing I keep hearing most requested now.
Generics is actually really hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's never been a working patch for it. Normally, all the ideas that we've got that we're floating, we've got working patches for in some stage. We can have a look at how it might work. But there's no such thing for generics because it's so difficult. I've tried twice to start it, and it's just too hard. You just get into I just get stuck in a loop with so many problems that I don't know the answers to. That's why it hasn't been proposed properly with a patch. I know there's an RFC for it, but there's no patch, so I don't know what I'm reading really.
Can you get into the weeds a little on why it's hard? That's interesting to me as like a non-internals developer.
Well, okay. Well, it's a bit like you know this the new variants RFC. Do you know about that one? Yeah.
I know a little bit about it. Yeah, the void variants.
No, not that one. The variants on parameters and return types.
Oh, okay. I saw that one. I read it, but I kind of glanced over. I didn't really dive too deep into it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been accepted. It was by Levi, and I think Nikita was involved as well. And it's been accepted, but there's no implementation yet that works properly because it's the same sort of problem. We don't know what order classes are going to be loaded in, and we've got to do all kinds of tricks for that, like late static binding, and have certain rules about. There's really weird examples you can write where if you write class extends an interface and the interface is declared after the class, it will say the class isn't found. And if you put it before, it will say the class is found. And these rules are difficult. These rules are difficult to overcome. They're especially in a way that's backward compatible. And when you grapple in with generics, which is basically a kind of variance, a kind of unknown future variance, and it's just a very difficult problem to solve, while not hugely overcomplicating PHP and while retaining backwards compatibility with how things work today. And that's basically the reason I get as far as the parser, and I get it all parsed out, and I get all the structures I need to make it work. And then it comes to writing the instructions and actually writing the API, and I just get lost in, like I said, in a loop of dependencies and load order and things like that. And I don't know the answers. But you know, I'm not the best internal developer. I'm sure it could be done, but no one sat down and done it, and that says a lot. It says that no one can, or no one thinks it's reasonably possible. People look at Java and they think that's got generics. Why can't we have generics? That's a sort of dynamic-ish language with the JIT and stuff. And we've got that sort of stuff. Why can't we have that? But it's not the same. It's not the same, and I don't know if we will get generics. But I know a lot of people, they really want it, and they really want typed arrays, which is a kind of generics. But I can't say that we're going to get it soon.
Would typed arrays be just as difficult?
Well, yeah, it's a kind. I think you can make it separately, but Nikita says it's basically we can't have typed arrays until we've got generics because it's a type of generic, and it has to work on the same basic.
Is that because arrays are just such a low-level structure in PHP? Because we have type properties, right?
Yeah, but I think it could be. I think it could be done. I think all it needs is to be syntactically compatible, so that whatever syntax we use for arrays would have to be forward compatible with whatever syntax we know we're going to use for generics, which is the only syntax that exists for generics. But Nikita says I'm wrong, so I defer to him if he says I'm wrong, then he's probably got really good reasons that I can't see. So
to like take a quick detour there, is Nikita a robot or is he an actual person?
no, I'm not sure. I think he's got flesh.
He does have flesh. Okay, that is a step in the right direction.
He has been seen in person with flesh.
Okay,
No, he's just very gifted.
I mean, there's no doubting that. I think he's 21 or 22 years old or something like that. And I mean, when I was that age, I was drinking my life away.
Yeah, that
And here
kind
he
of
is.
blows my mind, right? It's like, what have
Yeah.
I done with my life?
Yeah.
I don't even remember that age. I could have been that age, but I don't remember it.
I mean, I definitely was that age, but was I making smart decisions? No, I was not.
I definitely wasn't contributing to like a large portion of the web's architecture.
And now I'm getting paid for it too.
Yeah. Where does he work now?
JetBrains.
He works with JetBrains, yeah. But he doesn't have anything to do with PHP Storm. Well, he does, but don't tweet him questions about PHP Storm. he doesn't know that much about it. So he doesn't know when the next new feature's coming along. He's getting a bit more of that. I've seen him say about 20 times, I don't know anything about PHP Storm.
Oh, that's hilarious. But so, I mean, that was something, I think it came up the last podcast we did, Ben, or pretty recently, if Nikita was like hired and full-time working on internals, or was he also working on like PHP Storm? But
No,
it's not.
He is working on internals. That's the remarkable thing about it. They've just hired him just to improve PHP, which is great. It's a really great thing. More companies should do that.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to, take a second and just, say thank you to them, because that's a huge thing to make the language so much better, is,
Yeah.
indirectly or directly.
I mean, they're JetBrains, right? They're not even like, as far as I'm aware, they're not a big user of PHP, right? It's the kind of thing you would expect maybe like a WordPress to do, or someone that, or Automatic or whoever, someone that's like a very big PHP developer. I guess they're the user base.
They're not a big user, but the success of their company depends on the success of PHP. I mean, it makes business sense for them to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Done it. Because the better PHP does, the more professional PHP developers that there are, the more people are going to buy licenses for PHP Storm. So it's not like you can't make a logical pathway for why they did that. They didn't do it out of the goodness of their hearts, although it is good. But you can appeal to the people above you to make the same sort of decision on good grounds, because the success of everyone that works with PHP depends on the success of PHP. So you can make a pathway to that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So as an internals developer, do you think there's going to be much like less progress now that Zend is not supporting internals in the same way, or do you feel like that won't have much of an impact?
No, internals isn't really supported by companies. It's supported by people, and the person that supports it is Dimitri, and he's got no intention of stopping to work on PHP no matter what happens with Zend or whatever it's called this week. It doesn't matter to him. He's told me so much, so we don't need to worry about that. They didn't really push progress forward. I mean, they did in the past, but it's people, it's Dimitri, and it's Nikita, and it's Bob, and it's people, not companies, really. So I don't really worry about it slowing down. I mean, it's going to be a little bit harder to just do like really complicated things with the JIT, but eventually that will level out over time, and we'll be as quick as we are now. Yeah.
I mean, so like, if more people wanted to get involved with internals, what is the best way to get started being involved and contributing back to the language?
Well, the thing that everyone can do, I know it sounds really boring, but everyone relies on the documentation, and it's just written in XML. Everyone can understand it, and it's well, yeah, everyone can learn to understand it, and actually, I don't really understand it. I make mistakes and break the build all the time, but everyone can get involved in that. And then if you've got a bit of C knowledge, all you've got to do is go on the bug tracker. And I think it's got a button there to pick a random bug, and or look at bugs for an extension that you use or you're interested in looking at the internals of. And what you don't want to do is come along and say, I'm gonna write this massive language feature, because it will just not work. You wanna get in slowly and build up knowledge slowly and watch the process go on with RFCs, and a few of them, go through all the stages and learn how to conduct yourself, how to keep calm, do like meditation. So you have to like go in slowly, don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like outside of a few flare-ups, internals has been relatively calm and chill lately.
Yeah.
Like, it's not as terrible as it once was. Certain people I won't name.
I think it's got a worse reputation than it really deserves, actually. These people they just care, they're passionate. I mean, they're a lot of the time, they're in their houses in the evening. They could be with their family or watching TV or whatever, and instead they're reading internals lists and they're trying to be involved in the conversation. They're not nasty, and they're not being hostile to each other. They actually just care, and it's difficult to communicate. It's difficult to communicate about complex things, especially, and you've got language barriers that may not be obvious because these people have been talking to each other for 10 or 15 years or whatever, but a lot of the time English is not the shared mother tongue of the conversation, and so there's misunderstandings and crossed wires, and they're just human. But I think it's got a worse reputation than it deserves. It was never really a nasty place to be. It was just you've got to have pretty thick skin. But I mean, the same is true of anything. If you're gonna go and be a barman, you've got to have thick skin. If you're going to be a taxi driver, you've got to have thick skin. It's the same for everything. If you're going to be involved in something, you may come under fire at some point. You may need thick skin. So yeah, I think it's got a worse reputation than it deserves. But it is quite quiet now. There's not really conversations that provoke like hundreds and hundreds of responses like there used to be. I think it's supposed because most of the decisions were already made. Most of the things that people cared about. Things that people cared about were like big types being added to the language and things like that, and then decisions are made.
Yeah, it kind of feels like there was a lot of change, and now it's kind of slowing down as some of those changes have been put in place.
But now we're just enjoying the changes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It was a case of we knew what we wanted. We knew where we wanted it to go, and now we're sort of there. And after the JIT, I don't really know where to go after that. There's not really anywhere to go after that.
Yeah, are there any other big features in the pipe that you have like strong opinions on?
No, there's not really. We're not really talking about doing anything really. The only thing that keeps getting brought up is generics, and Nikita sometimes mentions it, and then it's like he's waiting for someone to say, "I'll do it," but no one so far has said that. So no, there's not really anything in the pipeline.
I mean, is there? Go ahead.
Well, I think it would probably everyone's just a bit nervous to suggest anything at the moment because no one knows how to implement anything at the moment. So, yeah. What were you going to say?
Well, that kind of takes away from the question I had, which is like, what is something you would like to see brought to PHP next, whether you know how to implement it or not, really? Like, is there something in another language that really?
Well, the thing that interests me is, for me, it doesn't really make sense that we're going to have a JIT, but we can execute code on the CPU, but we can still only execute it on 1.4. It doesn't make sense to talk about doing things like the RFC suggested, like GUI apps and all this machine learning. It doesn't make sense to talk about doing that on one core of a processor. So the thing that I want is parallel computation, and along with that, maybe fibers or something to do with maybe async or await. But that doesn't really bother me because we've already got really good userland solutions to that. The async problem, I mean, that's not really a problem anymore in PHP. So yeah, I'd like parallel to be added at some point.
So one of the things I would like to see, which I'd like your opinions on, is more like immutability support. There's an immutable classes and properties RFC a little while back.
Yeah, well, I think there's so many things around that. Like there's read-only properties and there's packages and class level visibility and things like that. Like all that stuff is so closely related that it sort of needs to be done as maybe one or two separate improvements. But I think if you just try to shoehorn in immutable classes or read-only classes or read-only properties rather, it just won't feel complete until we've got all these minor details that all the other languages have got sorted out. We sort of just got namespaces and that's it. So we want to start at the namespace and then work to the class level and like what sort of visibility do we want there? Do we want visibility? Do we want immutability? Do we want whatever? And then go to the property level and what do we want here? Do we want read only? Do we want final? And do all that stuff, or at least make the decisions about doing that stuff all at once, so it all makes logical sense. And then we can vote on the implementations or the individual RFCs over the course of time. But I think all that stuff's so interrelated that it needs to be planned at once at least.
Yeah, I mean, so like we already have final, right? So like, it seems odd that we have final and not more of this stuff. Which I don't even remember when final was added. It seems like it's been forever.
I can't remember either. I think it's just because it's difficult to do one of these things and have it feel complete. Final was like it's like necessary for classes, but then you just look at one of these problems. Like, are we going to have immutable classes? Say, right?
Right.
But how's that going to interact with visibility?
Yeah.
And then if we get some sort of package at some point, how is it going to interact with that? And then how are all these things going to interact with each other? And it's difficult to know the answers without actually discussing all of them at once and planning the solutions to all of them at once. So we're moving towards something that we know makes logical sense. We're not just doing this thing because someone's proposed it and made an RFC and an implementation for it. That's less important than having a logical type system that we know we're not going to get into some weird situation with and not be able to implement something or have to implement something strangely because we've supported something else earlier. So I think that all that wants to be planned. Well, I'm not wrong. Maybe someone can do each individual thing, but I think all them things are so closely related that it's difficult to do one of them. Yeah, which is why no one really has.
So, I mean, speaking of that, what kind of steps do you take in internals to kind of gauge backward compatibility or unexpected consequences and things like that? Is it just a test suite? Is it everyone's shared knowledge, or how do you handle that?
Well, we've got our own test suite, and then those instances I know of where we've broken backwards compatibility by surprise, we've learned about it from other people's CI. Other projects have got their own CI, and they'll come along and say, this thing is doing this weird thing. you know, it's thrown an error where I didn't expect it because we've changed some arg info or something. We've changed the signature to a function, and so it's broken their class hierarchy or whatever. And then they'll come and tell us about it, even though our tests will pass. So that's generally how we learn about that sort of thing. And we use our test suite, but then we listen to feedback, and we just try not to, even when there's a chance something's going to get backwards compatibility, even if it seems like no one is going to be doing that, we still try not to. We break it at the right time. We don't do it in like a patch version by surprise. So yeah, we do try quite hard, but I mean it happens, and then sometimes it's too late to fix the mistake, and it happens because we're just people. Yeah.
What? Not Nikita.
Yeah, not Nikita.
Yeah, we know he's a robot. You know, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this has all been incredibly useful. I mean, to hit on the JIT like one more time. I mean, is this something like you're excited to see in the wild, or are you kind of just hesitant about it and kind of just hoping that shit doesn't break, or are we just kind of hoping?
I'm extremely excited about it. Well, I'm only using PHP 8 with the JIT enabled already. I'm developing all my extensions and code along with PHP 8 already. It's I made a lot of noise about it and made it seem very doom and gloom, but I wanted to get a point across, and I did. And so, but I am excited about it. It's really great. It's the best thing that's happened since 7. I'm excited about it, but I'm not excited at the thought of everyone enabling this on their web servers. I'm excited about where it might take us, but like I said before, whether you use it on your normal stuff you're doing today is a thing you want to consider. But what should excite you is what can we do with PHP now? You know, what can we do that we wouldn't have done before? So yeah, that's big new areas. So that's exciting. Yeah.
It's like a whole new world for PHP developers coming out. So, is there any final thoughts that you wanted to bring up that we may have missed out on about internals or the future of language, anything like that?
No.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I mean, Joe, thank you so much. It's now well past 2 o'clock in the morning for you. So we'll let you hang out, get some sleep, get rested up for work tomorrow. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Ben, any last words?
No, thanks, Joe. It's been great chatting.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you all later.
Bye.